Under no circumstance ever should a man ever let a woman pay for a date, or you should split ever. No circumstance.
Even on the third, fourth, fifth.
What if it's the first date and you're just not into it?
Anything.
Okay, well, let me.
Period.
Well, let me. Okay, so
what kind of world are we living in?
Well, hold on a second. I agree with you. If I'm dating a girl, I would pay for everything.
Everything.
Yeah, everything. However, I could see for other people that might be in a different financial position, you know, you pay for 10 dates and then she's like, you know what, I want to treat you.
Well, that's totally different. No, what we're talking about is like, oh, we're going to alternate. Like, what's your serious? And she wants to take you out to something for a nice dinner. And you might, by the way, if you have the intent to marry, you're already like kind of blending finances. Like, I get that psychologically, but like, if you're like, oh, we'll take turns. Like, oh, well, you know, you pay this time, I pay this time.
What's your advice to a girl who the guy she's currently seeing, he says that?
Oh, do not marry that man.
But here's the thing. I feel like they should always
break offer.
Great. But they should offer. They should pull out the credit card.
The woman? Of course not.
Just to offer.
No.
It's a nice gesture.
No, by the way, no. This is feminism. Feminism is that you have to be this like self-independent. This is not a nice gesture. It's you trying to be like egalitarian. No. You as woman should want to be provided for. In fact, you should have an expectation that you as a woman are so important and so critical and so necessary and beautiful that it shouldn't even be a question.
Somewhere in the bowels of the city that never sleeps,
Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media,
is a man also not sleeping.
Syndicated radio talk show host Kevin McCullough.
And that guy would like a word with you.
Many of you know him as Nostradamus.
Of course that Kevin show is going to be great. The only thing that could be greater, of course, would be that Donald show. We don't have that, so we have that Kevin show.
Featuring the music of Dick Tunney and the Dream in Color Orchestra. Straight ahead, a very special edition of That Kevin Show, celebrating the life, success, and legacy of Charlie Kirk. Phil Boyce, Greg Laurie, and more. Join us right now. And now, from Times Square, the same city where the New York Yankees put Charlie Kirk's picture in the outfield this week as a moment of honor, here's That Kevin.
Welcome to Times Square. So glad to have you with us on what is, by every measure, an extraordinary weekend. For That Kevin Show. Those of you watching on the Salem News Channel, you'll get the first hour live. You'll need to go to the website to get the second hour. BizTV, you'll get the full thing. Radio, you'll get the full thing. And we will have it all over the internet once we are done. This is a very special collector's edition of That Kevin Show, if you will, because we are going to honor the man, the memory, the person, the success, the ambition, and the legacy of Charlie Kirk on this edition of That Kevin Show. There's so much that can be said about a man who defies kind of the logic of all of the rest of the salmon swimming one way. You know, there's this kind of old business adage that if you're part of the 98% that's headed in the one direction, you probably aren't, cut out for the best of leadership. But if you're part of the 2% that's swimming the opposite direction, you're probably going to achieve a great deal. And if anything described Charlie Kirk in terms of the business sense, it was that he swam against the tide. He swam against the stream. He swam against, even in his own industry, his own business. And coming up on today's show, Phil Boyce, who is the program director at Salem Media Group, who hired him, he will be here to discuss a little bit of this. We're also going to hear from Meaghan Mobbs of the Independent Women's Forum, one of the organizations that really came of age in the age of Charlie Kirk. And she's got some very important things to say about where the entire movement of MAGA and common sense and just reliable conservatism would be without Charlie Kirk. We are going to hear music from the worship team of the church that will conduct his service in these coming days. We will hear from Greg Laurie, who was kind of a surrogate pastor to Charlie Kirk in multiple ways. We have no sketch comedy scheduled for today. The only thing that will be in and amongst the interviews, instead of the comedy bits today, will be actual shorts from Charlie Kirk himself. Some of the most profound things he said, like there in the open about whether or not men should pay for the dates that they go on and not split the check with the girls. The truth is, Charlie was so traditional in how he viewed and understood the order of the world around him. And yet he was such a refreshing voice, because there's not that many that are willing to be that traditional, that understanding of orthodoxy, that understanding of apologetics, that understanding of science, that understanding of economic theory. And I think it's incumbent upon us to say from time to time that he was not one in a million. He was one of one, period. He had the unique ability also to speak to those in power and to speak to those who were on the outcast fringe. He had the ability to say very stern things to people that should know much better. And he also had great tenderness to speak to those who were hurting and who, by nature, may not have felt completely comfortable coming to him. The entire way he set up his dialogues on college campuses was so refreshing. If you want to ask me anything, prove me wrong about anything, I give you a microphone to do that. Come to the microphone. And if you disagree, come to the front of the line. Charlie pushing forward on the day with winsomeness, with positivity, with a word that we don't hear much in politics anymore, something called kindness. But he wasn't always kind. Sometimes he had stern words, like when he sometimes addressed the modern church and some of its problems.
Your pastor spoke out regularly against the slaughter of the unborn. Well, no, my pastor doesn't do politics. Oh, so you want Donald Trump to speak out on holy matters when the person you tithe and offer to, that you call your home church, won't even whisper about it. Got it. Preach!
That's good.
Let's remind each other what church is. Church is not a place where you go to be affirmed. Church is a place where you go to be saved and corrected. It is not a place to be told about how your lifestyle is the greatest thing ever. You go there to be reminded that you need a savior and that your life is currently in error. But people don't like that. They say, well, that's not very nice if I tell the people that come to church in that way. Well, hold on a second. What exactly are you running here? Is it a church, which is about correction and elevating the divine? Or is it a place where a TED Talk occurs with organized parking, above average coffee, and a motivational speech, and good music with nice lights? What exactly are you running there? You see, a church, in its proper context, as Andrew has done a great job throughout his career, and what a great example, by the way, for other pastors to follow. A church should be unafraid to go against the culture and not conform to the world, but preach the word.
And so, yes, sometimes he could be stern, but he could also show immense kindness, especially when dealing with confused kids that were trying to ask honest questions. This right here, this is the real Charlie Kirk.
I just want to say I'm a transgender male. What age should kids be able to get things like hormone therapy? Because I don't know what's true, what's not.
Tell me, are you comfortable telling me your story?
I've known that since like 3rd grade, and I'm currently 19, almost 20. I've known basically since then. I didn't start going by like a different name until 7th and 8th grade. I just don't know, like with the whole medical stuff, like what's true, what's not, what's helpful, because I've heard so many different opinions.
First of all, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm going to have an opinion that very few people will ever tell you, which is I want you to be very cautious putting drugs into your system in the pursuit of changing your body. Mm-hmm. I instead encourage you to work on what's going on in your brain first. I think what you need first and foremost is just a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. Just someone that is going to listen to what you've gone through, listen to what else is going on. My prayer for you, and again, very few people will say this, I actually want to see you be comfortable in how you were born.
Yeah.
I know that you might not feel that way, but I think that is something that you can achieve. I think that with the right team and the right people, you don't have to wage war on your body. You can learn to love your body.
Charlie Kirk dead at the age of 31, and yet living on through his incredible volume of work. And we're just going to scratch the surface over the next couple of hours and pay tribute to a colleague, to a leader, to someone who was a visionary, to someone who was doing all of these things in public and yet took the greatest amount of joy in his entire life from being a husband and a dad. And at the end of the day, will have changed the world for literally millions of people. So I hope that you'll stay with us. Welcome back to Times Square. A very sobering day that we are dealing with in America. In a week where not only did New York City observe the 24th commemoration of the worst terror attack on our nation, the day before we lose one of our brightest lights that on every level wanted to make his life, his nation, better. He wanted to exalt his God. He wanted to love his family, and he wanted to engage in the very thing that his enemies were trying to shut down, and that is to have civil conversations with people about anything that would lead them to the point of truth. Here to continue this discussion with me is Phil Boyce, who is, of course, the Senior VP of Talent and operations and a whole lot of things at Salem Media, Salem News Channel, Salem Radio, but also a very dear friend of myself and Charlie Kirk. And Phil, I remember the day that you called me, you were asking me about town hall columns and a bunch of other things. And I said, why are you asking me all this? And you said, well, we have this young guy, Charlie Kirk, that I think is going to be an amazing, amazing voice for our country. And I'll never forget that conversation that we had. But yesterday, this week, as you heard the story, kind of walk us through how you processed it, where you were over the course of the time of hearing about his being shot and his eventual passing.
Yeah, the comment that you were referring to was about 5 years ago, Kevin, and I had been following Charlie Kirk for some time and watching him blossom and grow into this wonderful spokesman, especially for America's youth. Mm-hmm. At the time, I think he was like 25 years old and had this amazing organization, Turning Point USA, that he had started in his parents' garage in Chicago when he was 18. And it had grown to the point of millions of followers, millions of members. He had campus committees with Turning Point USA all over the country, and he was making a difference. And I thought, this is a perfect candidate for the new Salem Podcast Network, which we were just wanting to start at the time. And I knew that you needed to have a couple of horses to pull the wagon, and Charlie would be one of those horses. So I talked to him there at CPAC, and he said, I unfortunately have just signed a podcast agreement with a different company. And so I was, sometimes I'm a little bit late and recognizing, somebody else recognized first. But I said, look, how long is that deal? And he said 18 months. I said, after about a year, you call me and we'll talk about how you're doing. And, if you want to come over at that time, we'll see if we can do that. Well, that's what ended up happening. He called me about a year later and he realized that he needed to be with a team of people that were like-minded. And the podcast company he was with was fine. It was a good company, but they weren't like-minded. Politically, they weren't where Salem is. Salem is a Christian conservative company, and everything we do is looked at through that prism. So he did come back. We were able to get him on. He became before too long, our fastest growing show on the Salem radio network and became our number one revenue generating show. And I think eventually now our number one audience show.
Yeah.
So when I heard the news yesterday, of course, I was devastated. I called Dave Centrella, our CEO. We prayed that Charlie would survive, but we knew that there was a chance he might not. And unfortunately, he didn't. I pray every day, every moment for his family, his beautiful wife, Erica, his two wonderful kids. I mean, when they take a life like this, they don't realize, they don't see him as a human being. They see him as a voice of the other side that they feel obligated to silence. And this isn't the way you silence the other side in America. This is how third world countries do it. This is not how we have ever operated in America.
Yeah.
And for you, Kevin, and other talk show hosts like you, it's got to be a chilling moment because the left is, I don't know who did this act. We haven't caught the guy yet, so we can't make assumptions, and I don't want to jump to conclusions. But you know that the left would love to silence every one of us.
Well, and I think that Charlie gave us some insight personally on all of this when he was last with Tucker Carlson. There was a clip that I ran across this morning in which he spends about 2 or 3 minutes breaking down what happens when you deteriorate God, when you deteriorate values, when you deteriorate any sense of moral responsibility, obligation, giving back in a successive number of generations in a society. And he talked about how that culture literally drains you of anything that's moral or godly or good. And what happens is when you don't have, and these were his words, when you don't have a dollar that works for you, when you don't have a job to go to, when you are told that you should be getting everything for free and everything is being given to you for free, you become very, very frustrated. And what happens, and this was very prescient because he was just with Tucker a few weeks ago. He said, what happens is that frustration turns to anger and anger turns to violence. And he said, we're in a polarized world right now where you can't sit down and just have a civil discussion with somebody that differs from you on that. And I think that he was well aware that every time he would be in these venues, that his life was potentially in danger, but he felt it was so important, Phil. And I just think it's the irony of ironies. The New York Post cover the day after his killing, full page headline dedicated to Charlie, but the quote they pulled had to do with his belief that we needed to have civil discourse in this country. He wasn't the bomb thrower. Phil, you knew Rush Limbaugh. You helped Rush Limbaugh become the number one syndicated star in America in talk radio. And Charlie wasn't anything like him. He was the opposite. He was the guy that said, let's engage. Let me hear your side. He never made an enemy. He only made, with the people that would come to his microphone at his rallies, they parted as friends. The very last one he spoke to yesterday, the first one that got up to talk to him was a Mormon who wanted to take him to task for his Christianity. And they had a pleasant, civil discussion that ended with both of them not really moving in their positions, but they had a deeper respect for one another. And that's something that is so rare, Phil, in what we're seeing today.
Well, Charlie had a passion for the young people of America. He recognized that if we don't catch the younger generation before they become too old, that we're going to lose them for their whole life. So he made a major impact on college campuses, even on high school campuses. He had millions of members of Turning Point USA. I think they had probably campus chapters on like
3,500 campuses.
3,500 campuses. That's a huge. And so he was making a difference. And that's why some people who couldn't handle the argument, couldn't handle his side of the argument, couldn't handle the fact that he won all of these arguments, they decided to kill him. And that is a shame in America that I don't think we can ever, we can recover from this, but it's going to take some time. And it's going to take thoughtful voices like yours and those of us on Salem to try to keep the calm going and try to keep from having this turn into something bigger.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next. That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. It's Kevin McCullough, That Kevin Show, thatkevinshow.com for everything related, social media. My column on Charlie Kirk's passing is up now at townhall.com, but it's also listed there. I encourage you to go see it. Phil Boyce is back with me. He's the Senior Vice President of Talent and Networks. He handles Salem Radio, Salem News Channel, Salem Podcast Network, almost anything that has the word Salem on it. Phil manages on some level, and we're grateful to have you here, Phil. I want to talk about the idea that Charlie, while he was one of one, there was no one else like him. He was not one in a million. He was one of one. God made him uniquely, I think, for the exact thing that he did, and he lived it to the fullest. But there is a different part of this story that has been bothering me starting about 3 weeks ago. And that is when you have a sexually confused child, young adult, young man, go into a Catholic school and mow down some young angels as they're in school classes. When you have a man who's been arrested 14 times and should never be seeing the freedom of the light of day on the Charlotte light rail, and out of the blue stabs an innocent young woman who was doing nothing but minding her own business, keeping herself to herself. And within the same week, you see what looks like to me a professional hit. You've got a high-powered caliber weapon. I mean, I don't have any of this in documented form, but my eyes looking at that videotape, that was a high-powered rifle that was shot with expert marksmanship. They knew exactly what they were aiming at. And sadly, they were successful. But Phil, there is this immense bearing of evil's gnashing teeth in our face right now. This country is bleeding at every corner because those who cannot stand what America is experiencing, by way of a little bit of a revival of our original beliefs and founding ideas and so forth under the Trump administration, there's this rage, this anger, this hate that turns to violence that has to be killed. And here's what I want to ask you about. The left championed the guy that stabbed the Ukrainian refugee, not the Ukrainian refugee. The left championed the trans shooter in Minneapolis and not the victims of that. And the left has said horrible things about Charlie within just minutes of him being shot, much less knowing whether he would live or not. I mean, some of the heinous stuff that was said within the first 24 hours reveals that there is a difference in how the left and the right view God himself and their responsibility to their fellow man. Where do we go from here in our civil discourse, Phil Boyce?
Yeah, there are some issues like you mentioned. You could also talk about the border and why did the left want all of those illegals to come into the country, which would change the culture of the country, not in a good way. And so there is, we talk about these 80-20 issues. This is what has destroyed the Democrat Party. They believe in the wrong stuff. They have been indoctrinated, many of them from the time they went to school. Yeah. We've seen this happen with professors. It wasn't that long ago, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, when Charlie Kirk and Dennis Prager were supposed to speak at Arizona State University, and 37 professors signed a letter saying that they would shut the school down if this was allowed to happen. And the college president said, okay, we won't allow them, and they canceled the meeting. Well, how do you have a discourse if you don't even hear the other side? And of course, Charlie was able to break through those barriers, and that's why they decided to come after him. It's a bad time in this country, Kevin. We can't let that side win. We can't. It's a violent side. It's a small minority. It's not all Democrats, of course, that think that way. But those that do need to be at least admonished that, no, this is not the right way to handle it.
Well, there used to be a day in this country where you could have very strong disagreements with people and then sit down at the table and have dinner with them and be able to be civil and friendly with each other. And I think that Charlie in some ways was single-handedly trying to bring back the idea of civil discussion in a way that we had never seen it. I think you're right. I think he was too powerful. I think he was too potent. He didn't know he was. He didn't think he was powerful. He was just out there doing what God made paid him to do. But what the other side realized is if he kept winsomely winning people to common sense and truth, that he was going to change the whole nation. And some people would argue that without him, President Trump would not have won in 2024, at least by the degree that he did.
I would argue that.
Trump actually carried the young people's vote in multiple states. That's unheard of for a Republican nominee.
Yeah, and I've recently been reading stories that particularly young Gen Z males are becoming more conservative.
Yeah.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. From New York, That Kevin McCullough.
All right, friends, thank you for being here, and thank you to Cissie Lynch and Greg Laurie and Meaghan Mobbs and Phil Boyce and everybody else that's participating in today's show. I'm really grateful. Coming up, just a couple of things about the program. You're going to hear from the worship team that operates at the Dream City Church in Phoenix. This is the church where I believe Charlie's funeral will be being held. And these are a couple of songs that are meaningful to them and to their worshiping body. And so that's what's going to be in the New Music Spotlight for this weekend edition. Normally we don't dip into that, but I wanted you to understand why that was slightly different today. For the rest of this segment, I want you to hear a couple of very special tributes that have been put together by two of the groups I work with very closely. One is townhall.com, where my syndicated column runs every day. You can read that. And then the second from a group called Live Action, which is all about the Project of Life, which was very close to Charlie's heart. Take a listen.
The political project in front of us as conservatives should be, how do we actually de-radicalize the country in the next couple of years? That's my obsession.
Before becoming a household name in conservative politics, Charlie Kirk was a teenager growing up in the Chicago suburbs. He told the Daily Caller in 2019 he knew early on politics mattered.
I was always naturally conservative, loved America, loved the values that our country stood for, and I never understood why you'd want to deviate from that.
Charlie departed this world far too soon, leaving behind a legacy that pulses with the unyielding spirit of liberty, faith, and patriotism. Though his time among us was brief, his impact was seismic, a testament to a man who fought not with grim determination, but with an infectious joy that rallied millions to the cause of American values.
I believe it's imperative we get the president reelected. In fact, I think he's going to get reelected.
As Trump later regrouped for 2024, Kirk continued to build an empire and a family. He married his wife, Erica, in 2021 and later became a dad of two. Trump himself thanked Kirk for staying loyal amid a year of chaos.
And I want to express my tremendous gratitude to Charlie Kirk. He's really an amazing guy.
Tonight, tributes continue to pour in for a man many believe helped change the course of U.S. political history.
Fox News decides Donald Trump is president of the United States. We've got our republic back, folks.
Let's go. There it is.
In a divided America, Charlie reminded us that defending values like freedom, faith, and opportunity could be exhilarating. He celebrated America while still fighting for it, as shown in every debate won. Every mind changed, and every heart inspired. As we mourn, let us honor Charlie by carrying his joyful torch. In his words, the best is yet to come. Rest in peace, warrior of light. Your legacy endures in the vibrant conservatism you ignited.
I talk to a lot of young people on campuses, at our events, on my radio show, podcast, and social media. Said differently, I visit college campuses so you don't have to. We're talking to so many voters that know it is time for change. They know that something is wrong. America's future is a series of choices. Our current state of slow motion national decline is a choice. Today is our 2-year-old's birthday. And I look at my daughter, and that is my why. And for those that are parents, you know exactly what I mean.
And I can tell you I'm super blessed. I have the best wife in the world. We have an amazing life. Building a family is the coolest thing ever. And my prayer for all of you is that you one day can do that.
That's so cute.
It's honestly the most joyful thing. And I've had some pretty amazing experiences. I've been very, very blessed. Very lucky, you could say, but very blessed is the word I would use. And the greatest joy I've ever had is coming home to my little daughter running up to my leg. There's nothing that even comes close to it. Not flying on Air Force One, not meeting with presidents. That pales in comparison to your little girl coming up and squeezing your leg.
You a Christian? My understanding is
Very, very much so.
like, why is that exactly?
Well, Jesus saved my life. I'm a sinner, gave my life to Christ, most important decision I ever made.
So you believe the Bible is real?
Yes, I believe the Bible is true and real. Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I could give you the technical answer. There's never been an archaeological discovery that has contradicted the truth of the Bible. And then, of course, the wisdom. There is not a truth of the Bible that if you apply to your life does not improve dramatically. And then finally, we have the most accurate and transparent, historically robust account that one can have of the most important figure ever to live in the history of the world, Jesus of Nazareth. And the resurrection is the pinpoint of my belief that Jesus did rise from the grave so that we may live.
What makes Christian mythology real?
So that's not mythology, but that is theology. If Genesis 1:1 and the resurrection is true, anything in the Bible is possible. You're looking at the greatest miracle. The greatest miracle is creation. And then the fact that Jesus rose from the dead. And I say, how do you know that Jesus rose from the dead? Well, show me another historical piece of a story where so many people willingly died a brutal death for a lie.
As I move into adulthood in order to become a more informed and involved citizen?
Well, first of all, thank you for being here, and I have hope thanks to people like you. How old are you again?
13.
13. Here's a couple things I want to encourage you to do. Learn something new every single day. And focus on what it means to be a good person and a person of strong character. Aristotle said that courage is the ultimate virtue. Without it, there are no other virtues. If people aren't courageous, you don't have honesty. You don't have justice. You don't have beauty. You don't have wonder. And so at age 13, I want you to commit yourself to a life of courage. Courage is doing the right thing when you don't know how it's going to work out. Courage is committing yourself to the correct course of action, regardless of the cost associated to it.
Every human being, I believe, is made in the image of the divine, is sacred, is unique. And if we get away from this principle as we have, we not only have moral degradation, we not only have the collapsing society around us, but it's bad for that being itself. That being itself is unique. That being has rights. And who are we to say, just because we're older, that we get to murder it? Thank you.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to That Kevin Show. And in the new music spotlight this week, Charlie Kirk's own worship team from Dream City Church.
I've got nothing new. How could I express all my gratitude? I could sing these songs as I often do, but every song must end, and you never do. So I throw up my hands and praise you again, yes. 'Cause all that I have is a hallelujah, hallelujah. And I know it's not much, but I'm nothing
create a company that's like close to being a fascist, and then like.
Okay. Well, how am I?
Sorry.
Let's go through this. How am I a fascist?
No. Dude, like you.
Can you name one thing I believe that's fascist?
You believe that like you are. But
I'm such a bad fascist. I let the people who disagree in open mic to talk to me for 2 hours uninterrupted.
Okay.
I'm an awful fascist. I'm more like a free speech liberal of the 1970s, not a fascist.
But I just want to say Turning Point USA is a evil company that was funded by thousands of fracking companies, and that just...
No, it's not thousands, but we do have some frackers that give us money. But
and then all it is making the rich more... rich.
Fascism to fracking.
That's all it is. That's all it is.
Okay, again, I'm happy to have a debate. I can see you're getting kind of fired up.
I'm sorry.
So, but why are we evil? Like, we're having a nice discussion.
Because
all of a sudden you're calling me like
because
a
it
fascist.
seems like you just want the rich get even more rich. Like
we haven't talked about the rich at all. I mean, so you don't even know my positions on this stuff.
2, 3, somewhere in the bowels of the city that never sleeps,
Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media,
is a man also not sleeping.
Syndicated radio talk show host Kevin McCullough.
And that guy would like a word with you.
Many of you know him from as Nostradamus.
Of course that Kevin show is going to be great. The only thing that could be greater, of course, would be that Donald show. We don't have that, so we have that Kevin show.
Featuring the music of Dick Tunney and the Dream in Color Orchestra. Still to come this hour, she's from the Independent Women's Forum, and they have been greatly impacted by the work of Charlie Kirk. Meaghan Mobbs joins us to discuss his impact on young women in America. Also, Cissie Lynch, the granddaughter of Dr. Billy Graham, the daughter of Franklin Graham, and back in the spotlight, it's Dream City Church from Phoenix, Arizona. And now, continuing with hour 2 of our dedicated tribute to the life, legacy, and impact of Charlie Kirk, here is That Kevin.
Assignment Desk Weekend. I'm Kevin McCullough. This weekend, America remembers the life and legacy of Charlie Kirk, a man whose name became synonymous with the new generation of conservative activism. At just 18 years old, Kirk co-founded Turning Point USA, a student movement that in a little more than a decade would grow into a national force. From the very beginning, his goal was simple but bold: to make the case for faith, freedom, and free enterprise on every campus across America. Kirk's temperament was both fiery and magnetic. He relished debate, welcomed tough questions, and never shrank from controversy. To supporters, he was a fearless defender of truth. To critics, he was a provocateur who refused to play by Washington's rules. But all agreed he was impossible to ignore. His success was measured not only in the size of the crowds that he drew on campus tours, but in the millions that he reached through digital platforms, podcasts, television shows, radio broadcasts. His mastery of media made him one of the most effective communicators of his generation. Recognition followed: Forbes, 30 under 30, Liberty University, an honorary doctorate. And just this week, the president himself at the White House confirmed he will receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously. Yet behind the headlines was a man devoted to faith and family. Friends say that while Charlie's public mission never wavered, his private joy was Erica and his children. A colleague told People magazine that's his most important legacy. His impact on American politics is undeniable. The LA Times wrote this week that Kirk was a force with young conservatives that boosted GOP and Trump. Scholars have noted how his embrace of the digital culture transformed campus rallies really into viral moments. In short, he brought a youthful energy to conservatism that helped shape not only a party, but a political era. Reaction to his death has poured in from across the country. Tributes describe him as a warrior for free speech, a champion for the unborn, a fighter for the forgotten, and even those who sparred with him have acknowledged his uncanny ability to spark national conversation with kindness. Charlie Kirk's voice has been silenced far too soon. But the movement he built, the ideas that he fought for, and the young leaders he inspired will carry on. For Assignment Desk Weekend from Times Square, I'm Kevin McCullough.
Met Charlie in Miami, Florida some years ago. Wonderful young man. And it's so shocking to think that someone with so much of their life ahead of them would be taken from us and in such a horrible way. You'll read articles that will describe him as a conservative activist or a right-wing activist. And I think we need to understand who Charlie Kirk really was deep down inside and what motivated him. Yes, he was a patriot. Yes, he was an American who loved his country. But first and foremost, Charlie Kirk was a Christian. It was his faith in Christ that motivated him to do what he did, and he accomplished so much in a relatively short life. He started Turning Point USA at the age of 18, and he went to be with the Lord at the age of 31. I think of a statement of a wonderful woman of God named Corrie ten Boom, who said, "A life is not measured by its duration, but by its donation." With that in mind, Charlie certainly made a great donation with his life. He made such a difference. And I've seen so many videos of him on college campuses, talking with students at Oxford, giving speeches. And he was such a powerful communicator because he could logically defend his position. And he did so with such courage and clarity. And I would even say compassion. I've seen videos of him, as I'm sure you have as well, of young people just insulting him to his face, and he would smile and then respond to them. He was very influential with younger people. With the generation of kids that primarily get their news from TikTok, they knew who Charlie Kirk was. And this is a tremendous loss. I think of how when I was young, how we were impacted by the JFK assassination. And I think for many young people, it'll have a similar effect on them. There's a resurgence of young people returning to church right now, especially Gen Z. And without question, Charlie Kirk had their ear and was influencing so many of them. At a time like this, we ask why. Why would God allow something like this to happen? And I can't really answer that question. I know we grappled with that why question when our own son, Christopher, age 33, died in an automobile accident 17 years ago. So we pivoted to the what question and the who question. First, the what question. What do? Well, we need to turn to God. And I think that we need to be inspired by Charlie's life. He was carrying the baton, and one would have thought he would have carried it for many more years, but now his race is done, but he hands that baton off, and we need to carry it to the next generation and call them to Christ and speak boldly on cultural issues and not be embarrassed or be ashamed. But then there's the who. Who do we turn to? We turn to God. See, here's the thing. Charlie Kirk is in heaven right now. He's safely in the arms of Jesus. The moment he took his last breath on earth, he took his first breath in heaven. The Bible says when we're in God's presence, there is fullness of joy, and on his right hand there are pleasures forevermore. Charlie is safely in the arms of Jesus. And the Lord perhaps has already said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Lord." But let's really remember to pray for Charlie's wife, Erica, and his 2 children who will not understand why their daddy's not coming home. And what a tragedy and what a loss this is. But what a legacy he left with his life. I think of the words of Jim Elliot, who was martyred for his faith. And he wrote in his journal, "I don't seek a long life. I seek a full one like you, Lord Jesus." Charlie lived a full life, and he made a big difference with his life, and his legacy will continue on. So we thank God for him. And we thank God for the influence that he will have, I think, perhaps even more in the months and years to come, because he left so much material behind. He was so active, so busy fulfilling the mission God called him to. And I would close by saying this. I pray that there will be a spiritual awakening in America. I know that was something Charlie cared about and talked about a lot as well. You know, when I was younger, we had the assassination I already alluded to of President Kennedy. Then Martin Luther King was assassinated. And not long after that, RFK, the brother of President Kennedy, was assassinated as well. And on the heels of that, a great spiritual awakening broke out in America called the Jesus Movement. May God use the life and the legacy of Charlie Kirk to remind America that we need to turn back to God.
Ready or not, we'll be right back. That Kevin. From New York, that Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to That Kevin Show. I had a chance to sit down with someone who knew Charlie quite well, Cissie Graham Lynch, the daughter of Franklin Graham, the granddaughter of Dr. Billy Graham. Here's how that conversation went down. I got up today heading to the lower part of Manhattan to accept an award for Salem Media of New York for, quote, making a difference in the city over this last year. And with my partners at Urban New York, Urban Hope New York, and others, we went to the luncheon, we received the award, we got in the car, and I get the text message from my former producer, Alex Garrett, who tells me, do you want to be live tonight? And I texted back, I pre-taped a program perfectly good, and I said, well, why? And they said, because Charlie Kirk has been shot. And within the next 5 minutes, the hundreds of text messages I got with links to footage that showed what I thought from the very beginning when I watched it was a high-powered round from a very far distance that knocked this man who's 6'8" back on his keister and literally off his chair. I thought this is not good. And this is where we are at tonight. Charlie Kirk, a 31-year-old father, loving husband, 2 beautiful children, has been taken from us in this life, and he is now with his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Here to discuss some of this with me is Cissie Graham Lynch, who is the daughter of Franklin Graham and who is the granddaughter of Dr. Billy Graham. Cissie, you and I have been friends for a long time, and I think when we first met, Charlie Kirk wasn't even a known entity.
Yeah.
When we were seeing Soul Surfer in the theaters years ago, nobody knew who Charlie Kirk was, and yet he made such an impact in such a short period of time. I know that you've had moments with him that were very personal and one-on-one. Just tell me your thoughts as you're processing this like the rest of the nation is tonight.
This is shocking. It is shocking to the world. It's shocking to conservatives here in America. But there's no doubt at a young age, God's hand was on Charlie Kirk. I mean, he was a young boy at the time when he co-founded Turning Point USA.
18 years old. Not even a college, teenager. Not even a high school graduate yet.
No, and God's hand was on him. He had this wisdom. I think we've all learned from Charlie, listening to his debates and his conversations that we've had. We've all learned from him. You know, I had the honor of knowing him and doing events with him. And I think just like everybody, it is shocking. You never know what a day holds. And these days that we face, they seem dark. But Charlie's hope was not of this world. His hope was in Jesus Christ. He was a freedom fighter. He fought for the American people. He fought for the freedoms that we stand on and that we hold precious in this nation. And he wanted people to have that knowledge. But the most important thing is he wanted freedom for people's souls for eternity. And as he got older, at the young age of 31, you saw in the last couple years, it went beyond American politics.
It did.
Where God really laid it on his heart for him to bring faith into this conversation. And I'm sure being a husband, I know Erica had a huge impact on his life spiritually, and then becoming a father, that changes everybody. And that was where his hope was. And in moments like this, there's not too many words to speak. And you cling, you pray, even though the world will mock prayer. You pray for his family. We should be fighting for his family now on our knees. And knowing that Jesus says, I came to give you peace, not the way that the world gives peace. And that is what, I'm just praying for his precious family, that there will just be a peace that flows, that's beyond our understanding in a dark day like this.
It is one of those things where you see, and I was there at the beginning. When Phil Boyce went and recruited him for the Salem radio network and said, what do you think of bringing Charlie Kirk on? I said, Phil, there's no one with more passion for the American first agenda than Charlie Kirk. I think his passion outpaced Donald Trump's in terms of America first, in terms of believing in the values of what this country was founded on. And that's hard to do because our president is he's very strong on America first, but I think Charlie outpaced him. But beyond that, in the last 2 years, as you mentioned, he began to turn whole segments of his show into discussions of what the gospel meant and why Jesus said some of the things he said. And today's final question that he took before this murderer took his life, he engaged a conversation with a young Mormon kid about the reliability of Scripture and the reliability of the gospel and why the Bible is trustworthy. I mean, Cissie, when you talk about what this man believed at the young age of 31, and that is very young. I'm looking back on that now and going, that is very young. Mm-hmm. But what God did with him and how boldly he spoke about it was something that, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of on the levels of the early disciples in my mind. Like this guy was fearless in terms of winsome.
Oh, and the knowledge he held in his head. I mean, to have a conversation with him, the amount of knowledge he had, and to be able to quickly, respond to some of these, it was a gift that we've never seen, in modern times. And the Lord used him 31 years beyond measure.
Yeah.
What he's been able to do on college campuses. I think the crazy thing is, here's a guy that was against college campuses, dropout, went to argue on college campuses, and then it was on a college campus where his life was taken way too short.
And I would say argue is a very overused word in that sense, because the thing that I think Charlie will be remembered for is civil discourse. If you disagree, come to my microphone and let's have a discussion about it. Because we can discuss things and be civil to one another.
You're right. I never really saw him. He was just so clear in the conversations. It was just conversations he wanted to have.
Yeah.
And I pray that during this time, God continues to use his life to point people to eternity with him.
I think that you're right, and I think that will happen, Cissie. You're at an event. You stepped out to be with us tonight. Thank you for these precious moments. I'm really grateful.
Well, thank you, and may we continue to pray, not just say it, but actually take time tonight to pray for his family.
His lovely wife, his 2 young children, and a life that was robbed far too early. Kevin McCullough coming back.
Thank you,
Kevin.
Kevin.
Special edition. Stay right here.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. From New York, That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to That Kevin Show from Times Square. Kevin McCullough, glad you're with us. A special edition as we continue our thoughts about the life and the reflection and the celebration of everything that Charlie Kirk accomplished in his short, can you believe it, just 13 years that he was in the public eye. From age 18 to 31, he accomplished all that we know that Turning Point USA, his podcast, his radio show, everything else that he's accomplished all happened within that short, condensed period of time. Meaghan Mobbs is back with us from the Independent Women's Forum, an organization that kind of has come of age in the age of Charlie Kirk. Meaghan, I think, particularly in the Trump era, IWF became much more well-known, and what you guys have been doing is so much more potent and important right now. And I've been a champion for you guys, but Charlie had a big impact on young women in the country, particularly college-aged. Even those that disagreed with him, he always tried to reach in a friendly manner. What are your personal thoughts?
Kevin, I think you said exactly right, which was he was a pioneer in an era of debate. He purposely went to college campuses to reach people, and he invited people who disagreed with him to engage in discourse, to have those challenging conversations. And that's actually what made Charlie so special. It didn't matter that you disagreed with him. It's that you were willing to enter the arena of discourse with him. And that is his legacy. And I think it's something that we should be celebrating, irrespective of where you fall on the political spectrum. And we should all be condemning political violence and anyone that wants to silence free speech here in America.
I am particularly disturbed, and I'm not making any bones about this. I've been pretty open in my town hall column since his death and what we're talking about on my radio show. But you have not just Charlie's death, but you've got the stabbing of the young girl on the Charlotte light rail. You've got the mowing down of the kids in Minneapolis a couple of weeks before that. You have the assassination attempts of Donald Trump. You have the walking up behind a CEO on the street in New York City and blowing away somebody at point blank range. There used to be this ability, I think, for both sides to engage in debate that they didn't see eye to eye on. But I don't remember an era where one side was so wholly dedicated to literally wiping out people from the other side. And on top of that, because not all those examples were political, the girl on the light rail, she's just a refugee. She's just here. She was minding her own business. She was just going home from her shift at the pizza parlor. And without any bothering of anyone, the guy behind her stands up and shoves a knife in her, and she doesn't even know she's bleeding out and dying until she's dead. I mean, this is but my response to that is what you had in all of those circumstances was you had a large number of people on the left go on CNN, go on MSNBC, even Jessica Tarlov and some on Fox, that tried to in some way explain away these evil deeds, to explain away the rationale for people taking these actions. You had Matthew Dowd within seconds of Charlie being shot on Thursday going on MSNBC saying that he said hateful words. And so because he said hateful words, in essence, he was due a hateful response. And that this had basically been something that he had sowed in himself. There was a TikTok going around the day following Charlie's death in which there were young people saying, "We got Charlie in the neck," like leading chants of it. Where are we at? And what does it bode for us as a country in this moment?
So I think that you hit upon so many different things there, and I want to try to make sure I address all of them because I think they're all so critically important, which is, first, we are seeing a rise in political violence in our country, and it has to be condemned wholesale by everyone. There can be no place for that in our country, irrespective of political party. I think we also have to restore truth back to our words. Debate is debate. Violence is violence. Words are not violence, and therefore we can agree bitterly at times, but that does not justify a physical, violent reaction to words, even if you find them disgusting or whatever adjective you want to use to describe them. And so I think that we have to kind of restore ourselves back to what violence actually is and what debate actually is, because without that, you do have this extreme polarization, these extreme actions, and they do feel justified, even though they're not justified at all. So that's one thing. I think we have to wholesale ensure that we are condemning political violence and being very honest in the debate about that. Relatedly, we have a crisis of public safety in our country. You mentioned Irina, the Ukrainian woman refugee fleeing a war zone, looking for safety here in America, only to find her life ended here in America, not by a bomb in Russia. And so I think the issue is that we do have a revolving door of crime in our country. The person that killed her, 14 previous arrests, was let go. And so we have a problem with crime. And how that's related to political violence is when you excuse bad behavior, when you reward it, or you say it doesn't really matter, it's not that bad, then what happens is there's no consequence.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. Here he is from New York. That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to That Kevin Show. Kevin McCullough, a very special edition as we are celebrating the accomplishments in life of a legacy voice, a pioneering mind, someone who had a much bigger heart than he was ever given credit for in the media. This was someone who actually genuinely loved people that disagreed with him, to the degree that he would let them come to a microphone, and as they were yelling at him saying, "You're a fascist," he was like, "I'm a terrible one because my microphone's open to you here to talk to me." We're talking about Charlie Kirk and his passing this week. Meaghan Mobbs returns with us, and she's written this piece, "The Loss of Charlie Kirk and the Price of Our Divisions." And I want to get into that in just a second, Meaghan, but I want to go to where you ended in the last segment. You said that on social media, the vitriol has gotten really out of control, and you're absolutely right. And there are those of us on the right that have contributed to that, and we've been harsher than necessary. And there's certainly people on the left that have gone way overboard, calling for the deaths of people. There have been people that were celebrating Charlie's death after he died. It's just disgusting stuff. But one of the areas that Charlie really impacted, and people like my 12-year-old and my colleagues' 14-year-old and other people that had high school and college age kids, is he got into those crevices of society with the message of hope and a new day and American excellence and Jesus. And there were all these ways that he was able to reach past places that nobody else went to. And had it not been for social media, I'm not sure he would have been able to do that.
I think you're exactly right. I mean, social media is beautiful in some ways and brutal in others. And I think you're exactly right. The thing about Charlie that was so special and unique, and the problem is right now, of course, you're seeing all, the things that people found controversial brought to the forefront. But to your point earlier, he brought conservatism, conservative thought, faith to an entire generation of young people who felt so strongly about it. I think what's so tragic is I was looking at the videos yesterday, which were so horrific, of what happened to Charlie. The crowd was huge. The crowd was huge because he spoke to so many different people about so many different things. And again, to your point, there was people that showed up that didn't agree with him, but were willing to go listen and were willing to engage him on the content of his ideas. And that's what is the true tragic loss of all of this, is that people have to feel safe on left, right, center to say things and encourage people to debate them, not for it to lead to violence.
It's totally one thing for Charlie to say the things that he says, and if you understand them in context, about 99% of the time, no one's going to have a problem with him. The problem was that media purposefully misrepresented him and making him supposedly out to be a person that would say things that he never said. You talk about this in a column. What did you feel was so important that you wanted to get it across in writing?
I think that what I want more than anything is there has to be this calming down of everything. And I know us because I was so angry. I am so angry. And in our anger, I think all of us want to punch back, right? All of us in our sadness and our rage want to say, no, we feel targeted. We're the ones being attacked. And in many cases, that is true. You listed them earlier. But I think that we have to return. And I think this is what Charlie would actually want, is a return to our better angels, our better nature. That it's okay to be disagreeable. It's okay to have different sides, right? To say that there's not going to be differences is ridiculous, but we should be willing to be disagreeable without being violent. And I think in this loss, there's a lot of fear that this is going to be normalized, that if you disagree with someone or you have punchy or unique or maybe outside the norm ideas, that the result isn't going to be a healthy debate. It's going to be violence. And what you end up having then is a lack of free speech, a lack of free expression, and that makes us less safe and less free and less democratic.
Well, that's what I want to get into, because the motive of whoever was behind what happened here and whoever's been behind a lot of the violence we've seen, the Minneapolis shooting, it was very clear that the transgressor there wanted the teachings of Christianity to be injured and to be stopped because they didn't line up with what that person felt sexually they should have the right to expect. The same with Charlie. I think the idea was, well, we can't out organize him and we can't shut him up any other way. So we'll literally silence his voice.
Exactly.
And I think that sends a chilling message to people like me that is on the air 25 hours a week and has a lot of, social media out there and columns I've written and stuff I've said. But Meaghan, the more I've thought about this, and it is kind of a scary day to be living in. I mean, we got notes from Salem management asking us as show hosts and personalities to be extra careful in our, activities abroad and so forth from now on. And it's gonna sit in the back of my mind. But the thing that we can't do, we can't let it stop us from speaking, stop us from engaging, stop us from having the civil discourse in society. Because without it, the polarization only gets more pronounced.
I think you're exactly right. I think that this is where we have to be courageous and we have to lean into our fear. I think there's many people who express views that are potentially polarizing or challenging, who are fearful. But I would just say to you and to them, we have to have the courage of our convictions. We have to be willing to persuade and put ourselves out there, because that is the only way that we're going to stay free. And so I think this is a moment earlier. I said we have to unite around the things that make us American, the unique things that we all possess, irrespective of the political spectrum, but that also we have to lean on our courage to be willing to keep speaking.
I'm reminded of an old Rush Limbaugh quote, and Rush was accused of being a bit of a bomb thrower and kind of part of the problem, if you believe that there was a problem. But he said, when they come to take your speech away, speak louder. And by the way, he was not referring to assassination. He was talking about government trying to clamp down on speech and government trying to squelch voices and so forth. This raises it to a different level. This raises it to kind of a 3D perspective as opposed to a 2D, if you will. And I think that he's exactly right. I think that but I would caution my colleagues across the spoken word media. Let's be more winsome. Let's be more like Charlie. Let's not get so angry with those who disagree with us, and instead engage them from a standpoint of how can we understand what you're saying, and how can I help you understand what I'm saying? I think that when that dies, everything else dies with it.
I couldn't agree more. I think there was a column that was written by Eli Lake in the New York Times today that said the exact same thing: to be more winsome, to have the moxie, the willingness to debate in a way that is meant to be persuasive. And that is what makes us so great as a country. Like, let the best ideas win. And that means we have to talk about all the ideas and then settle as a majority on what we feel as Americans is that best idea.
Meaghan Mobbs of Independent Women's Forum. Go to IWF.org and look up The Loss of Charlie Kirk and the Price of Our Divisions. Meaghan, we appreciate your time.
Ready or not, we'll be right back. That Kevin.
Welcome back to That Kevin Show. Final few minutes with Charlie Kirk's own home church worship team, Dream City.